Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce you today to my guest, Rachel Stewart. Rachel started as an unqualified office manager, but over the last decade became the general manager of a $22 million restoration company and the CEO of a software development company focused on getting contractors the technology tools they need. Over the years, she learned that the only limitations to her success were in her own mind. In her book, Unqualified Success, Rachel Stewart shares the tools that made all the difference in her achievement in a practical and engaging way. The things she learned the hard way are made available in this easily accessible format for anyone who wants to take their life to the next level. And boy, can I testify to that. I have a copy of her book in my hands right now. So please join me in welcoming Rachel Stewart. Hey, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I'm so excited to have you here. So Rachel, as you know, Work from the Inside Out, it's a podcast all about transitions and the ways in which people find their way through their careers, through their lives, finding their way through work and finding things that they do that are meaningful and fulfilling. And you've done that over and over and over again. So start us at the beginning and tell us about where you started and how that got you to where you are now. It's such an exciting story.
Absolutely. So I think when we talked before, I told you a little bit all the way back to maybe high school. And I don't know
if you did
want to go back that far.
No, tell us, because
okay.
Please do, because I'll tell you, you told me that in high school you thought you wanted to be an attorney.
Yeah, I did. I really was passionate about that. I graduated wanting to go into political science, and then from there I wanted to go to law school and become an attorney. And my big dilemma at the time, as I was in high school, was trying to figure out how I was going to find the balance between my family and what I really wanted to do with my career. And I knew I wanted to be a mother, and that was really important to me. But I also had a lot of this ambition inside of me, and I just didn't have a lot of models of that at the time. So I'm not that, well, I don't know, maybe I'm starting to get old, but I graduated from high school in 2000. And even then, I didn't see a lot of women that were trying to do both really successfully. And so it was just a really big dilemma for me, is how I was going to be able to pull that off. And I'm one of those people that when I start something, I'm really passionate about it. And so that was my other concern is, okay, maybe there are some people who can do it, but I probably can't, because once I find something that I love, I go all in, and I knew it would be very difficult for me. So that's kind of my mindset when I was heading into college. And so I went to college and started in political science, and pretty quickly recognized that maybe this wasn't the avenue that I really wanted, and started maybe looking at some other options. During this time, I looked at maybe becoming a nurse and some of that. I ended up meeting my husband, and he at the time was trying to work through his MBA. And so I left school for a little bit, figured I would work while he was trying to finish up, and then I would eventually go back when I had a better idea of what I really wanted to do. And then in the middle of that process, we ended up getting pregnant with our very first. And so she was just a miracle, and I was able to be home with her for a little bit. So in the course of that, we had 3 of our 4 children, and I would do things on the side. I was always really just wanted more like growth and development and stuff like that, which was hard to get at that stage. I really enjoyed my family, but it was difficult when you feel like you're doing a lot of monotonous stuff over and over, changing diapers, messes, all of these kind of things. So I always kind of was continually learning or dabbling on the side. And I had started to do some graphic design work and some book layouts. And I kind of did self-taught things. And I really enjoyed that, kind of worked with my creative side. And we were just kind of plugging along, living the American dream. We had just bought our house right in 2007 at the kind of the peak there. And then 2008 hit, and our home lost half its value basically overnight. Most Americans aren't unfamiliar with the same story, so we're not alone. But we were upside down in our house. Our husband lost his job. Our third baby was just 6 weeks old, and so we were just kind of trying to figure out how we were going to make it all work and what was going to happen, and whether my husband was going to continue to try to look for a new job or if he was going to go into work to employment for himself. And that's ultimately the road we went down. Is he started an insurance agency and went and started working for himself. But in order to fund that, get that growing and everything, the decision was made that I would maybe go back to work. And so somebody had reached out to him, and that he had went to college with. They were in the accounting program at ASU together, and reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm looking for an office manager for my restoration company, or a bookkeeper, somebody that can manage my books and kind of run my office. And do you know of anybody that would be interested?" And my husband said, "Well, for my money, I'd hire my wife." And he said, "Great. What does she do?" "Oh, she does graphic design." So
well, that's like bookkeeping and accounting, right?
So I had been in QuickBooks once or twice before, but I definitely didn't have an accounting degree. It was definitely unqualified. So, the owner definitely took a chance on me. I was hired by his consultant, and I think that, or like interviewed by his consultant, and went through several interviews. So I think they saw at least something in me that maybe had potential, even though technically on paper, I was absolutely unqualified for the position. So that's kind of how I got back into the working world. And, I just fell in love with the company. I fell in love with the integrity of the people that were there. I fell in love with, what we were doing. It felt like we were doing something really valuable at critical points in people's lives. When they go through a flood or a fire or something traumatic, you're meeting them on a really bad day. And if you're doing your job right, then you can help that process go a little better. But it also puts the pressure on.
And you saw that from day one. You felt like you saw that in that business.
Yeah. I mean, well, maybe not day one. Day one, what I saw was I walked into a flood house. So it wasn't a flood house. So it was a little farmhouse. And so they weren't even operating out of a real commercial business.
Oh.
So all of the trucks were behind this farm. All of the drying equipment was probably stored in a shed somewhere, and everybody was operating out of the kitchen. So there were only 3 full-time employees, and they were just on folding tables in the kitchen.
Oh.
The kitchen had the best lighting, and I think there were 2 computers that everybody was sharing. And so so when I walked in, I first saw kind of that's kind of what I saw. And there were just piles of papers kind of everywhere, just no structure. When I got into the books, there was I can't tell you when the last time the bank statement had been reconciled or anything. So at the core, the outside of the business, the way they treated their customers, the product of the owner knew structural drying like nobody I've ever seen. He just, the product that they were giving to the customer was just exceptional. They had a great reputation in the industry, but the back end of it was kind of a disaster, and which was so fun for me. I mean, when I look back at it, it's one of the most fulfilling parts of my entire career. it just was like a little puzzle that I was all trying to put together is how everything fit together, like what was relevant, what wasn't relevant, and cleaning up all of their books and getting processes in place. It was a lot of fun. But
so going back to those early days, you said like you really weren't qualified to do the job. And yet I remember when we did our pre-interview before this, you said to me, I'm not really qualified to do the accounting, but I am qualified to figure it out.
absolutely. And I did spend a lot of time figuring it out. So I dived into every book that I could find, like learned how to read a P&L statement, learned how to do a balance sheet. Like in our business, a work in progress, a WIP is really important to be able to figure out, what's recognized revenue and get that entered as a journal entry and really be able to manage the financials that way. So I learned a lot and I learned it really quickly. And what's so great in the world that we live in is we have access to so much information, so much education. Like you don't have to be in school to get a fantastic education. There are so many resources.
Yeah.
And super easy. You can pull up YouTube and in a matter of 15 minutes get the basics of, whatever problem it is you're trying to solve.
You kind of self-taught yourself a lot of this.
For sure.
Wow. And the company grew pretty quickly at that time, didn't it? I mean, even though it was a tough time in the economy, from what I recall when we spoke earlier, there were a few employees around a kitchen table in 2008, and then by a couple of years later, the number of employees just about tripled. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. So when I was brought in, my goal was, Russ, who's the owner and the consultant has sat me down and said, okay, these are objectives over the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, we want to get to 5 million. And then, the owner would like to sell and maybe move on to something else or whatever. So I knew that was my objective, was to be a support and really help grow the company to that level. And so by 2010, we had hit that $5 million mark. And when I came in, I think we were about 1.5 million. So like I said, the external product was so great. We just needed some internal direction and some internal systems, and it was really able to scale quickly.
Did you think that when you went in there, I mean, you went in and went back to work, did you think you were going to be there 5 years later? Or did you think, oh, this is just something I'm going to dabble in while my husband gets his company up and running, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do next? Or, I mean, did you really think did this feel like a stopgap measure to you, or did you really think you were going to stick with it?
I didn't think that this was going to be a long-term situation, at least not full-time. I thought maybe, we'd get things under control and get things going, and my husband would get his business going, and then maybe I would do some part-time work or, take a step back and just do some things from home. And
because you had 3 kids at the time.
Yeah, I had 3 kids at the time.
Yeah.
Yep. So
you had another full-time job.
Well, when I look back at it, what I really think is that this is not something you do alone. And so
yeah.
My parents were so instrumental. I mean, and that was a big thing for me. And I know everybody's not so fortunate, but for me, like the fact that, they were able to be, with my mom basically raised my kids for a couple of years. Well,
so you had family nearby. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, I made a big difference. So, they were in a really great environment. So
how nice. And so you started in 2008, 2010, the revenue goal reached in 2 years. You reached, or the company reached its 5-year revenue goal, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And so at that point, the owner kind of decided, that he did not enjoy the management of people. And I mean, what he really was passionate about was like the technology and also the big picture, like being able to really understand all the science behind drying and doing that really well, and that kind of a product, and like providing a really great customer experience. But he didn't really like the day-to-day and the managing of people and like giving feedback. And like everybody's like, you never really know, or am I doing a good job or a bad job? Because that just wasn't his thing. And so he just wanted out of all of that. And so he said, hey, I want to merge with another company. So he came to us and said he was going to merge, but he was going to go from being one of just a solitary single owner to one of 6 owners. So there would be 7 owners of this other restoration company. And we had actually gone as far as moving into their building. And
wow.
It was just one of those things where I kept going, Russ, like, are you sure? Are you sure you really want to do this? Because you have so much autonomy right now. You get to kind of control your destiny. That won't be the case over here. Like, this is a really great business. And if you want less responsibility and less of that, then hire a great general manager, hire somebody great to come in and run it. And you can be as involved or uninvolved as you want, So that's kind of what I kept saying. And then the day they were supposed to sign papers, he pulled out of the deal. And so
now, do you feel like you had something to do with that at that point, or did you have any influence?
For sure. And I feel really bad for the other company that we had got down this road so far. I know they probably felt very betrayed by the whole thing, but it was just really not in the best interest of the owner at all. And I think he was just so wanting to solve this immediate problem that's kind of the avenue that
went. So at that point, so you started out kind of in an office management, bookkeeping, accounting role. So clearly within a couple of years, you had a lot more influence in this little company that grew very quickly, didn't you?
Yeah. So I would say this to anybody who reads Unqualified Success and you're wanting to take the next stage of your business.
Yeah.
I would say don't wait to get a promotion. Like, there's so much opportunity there. Like, if you just and there's a need usually. And if you just go in and start solving problems and take on the duties of a role, regardless of whether you officially have gotten, hey, this is your title.
Yeah.
Then I think a lot of doors open up, or you'll be.
Know one of your chapters is called "Fake It Till You Make It." So, but it sounds like you must have had a very nice way of faking it till you make it. So, and you weren't really faking it because it sounds like you knew what you were talking about, that you weren't just making things up, that you were really offering valuable sort of problem solving kinds of ideas and strategic ideas that you were genuinely interested in the well-being of the company. You weren't just sort of throwing ideas around. You were really being a key strategic member of the team. And you must have had developed a good rapport with the owner.
Yeah, I think he had seen, my work and had trusted me in that role a little bit. And, somebody might look at it and go, oh, well, maybe that was a little self-serving. Like you led him in this direction so that then maybe you would get the opportunity. But that was the furthest thing from my mind when I told him, hey, you need to hire a great general manager. You hire somebody, you bring him in. The last thing that I thought would happen would be that I would get that position.
Right.
So I was shocked when our consultants and Russ came to me about 2 weeks later and said, hey, we've talked about this a lot and we really want to offer you this position. And I said, you guys really know that I have no experience managing people. But you do know that I'm so passionate about this company. I will learn whatever it is. If you guys invest in me, I will learn whatever I need to learn. And I will say over the years, like they've just been so generous with me in that. Like, I'm sure there were so many times when it probably wasn't the best move or the best strategy or best approach that I was taking, and they kind of gave me a little bit of runway to fail, which was
another chapter in the book, actually.
yes. Failure. And in case any of your listeners think that I'm talking about myself throughout the book, I don't. I talk about myself for like a very short piece of the intro.
Yeah, that's true. You provide a lot of wonderful and very accessible scenarios throughout the book that really speak to different, I think, stories that many of us can relate to around, failure and faking it till you make it, and then also exercises that people can try themselves to really try to step into some new territory and to grow and develop ourselves professionally. But they do come from your own experience. But you're very good at saying, look, this isn't just about me. This is something that other people can do as well.
Yeah. In fact, I love the main person that kind of follows throughout that whole book is an individual named Magno.
Right.
I follow his kind of unqualified journey throughout the book, and just like his story is so great. He came in as an immigrant, and just kind of the way that he built his life, totally unqualified to do so much in a new country, and just kind of all of those characteristics that he deployed in order to really make himself a success.
Well, and how apropos is that in this day and age when we are all trying to figure out how all of us got here, because none of us really very few of us actually came from here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I love it. And yet we can all relate to Magno in one way or another. That's what I love about your book. And there's a chapter in there for everyone. I really believe that. So here we are in 2020. The company is now over 50 employees.
Well, not quite.
No?
Not quite. We're just about 50 employees is
okay.
But we have this other company that we started in the midst of all this. So as we were growing and scaling our restoration company, where we were really running into issues was with our job management software and the availability of what was out there to contractors, and was so frustrated. So eventually, after doing so much research and coming up short on what was out there, we really decided that if we were going to be able to have this for our company, then we needed to build it. And so then we started a job management software company that we have now launched throughout the entire country for other restoration contractors. So that's a separate business. That's Accelerate. And we have several employees under there.
And we can include some information in the show notes about that software as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So I love the way you pinpoint, what's working, what's not working, and then being able to troubleshoot it. And then it sounds like you also were able to, work collaboratively with other people to come up with solutions and move things forward. It sounds like it was all so smooth.
The reason I laugh is because anybody who is building a business or starting a business just knows that that's not the case. And there's
right.
And when you look back at it, you're like, oh, that was a beautiful vista,
Right.
But there were some very low lows and some, very high highs. And especially as I was really trying to understand management and how to get everybody moving in the right direction, there were a lot of years where it just felt like I was pulling the whole team on my shoulders, and not because we didn't have really talented people, but trying to, it was a product of my poor management. And so so learning how to collaborate more, learning how to not just go, okay, this is the direction we're going, everybody get on board, didn't work that effectively.
Like, come on, everybody, follow me. And then you're looking behind you and you're saying, wait a minute, where is everybody?
Exactly. And so, I can be pretty strong-willed, I have a lot of drive. And I think there were several years where I just wanted to bulldoze my way through, the challenges. Like I said, I've learned so much about management throughout the whole thing. And I mean, I think that that's the whole purpose of the book that I write about, is like that we're all unqualified for that next step.
Mm.
And so if we want to stay at a place where we're qualified, we have to be content with no growth. And if you want to grow, you have to be comfortable being unqualified and being willing to learn and to grow and to self-evaluate, I think, is really important, to be able to go, okay, like whatever is not working out,
Right.
That doesn't change my value as an individual, but it definitely changes my value in whatever this task is. And how could I adapt? How could I change? What do I need to do?
So a couple of things there then that are, a desire to grow and learn and develop, and not just as a manager and not just in developing management skills, but also it sounds like getting to, knowing yourself and knowing where you need to stretch yourself and grow yourself personally. Because if you don't figure out what you're doing personally that contributes to how you operate as a manager, as a leader, right? Then if you don't know yourself, it's hard to then make those changes that it sounds like you were able to make, right?
And all of us have a bias, right? And the way that we see ourselves and the way that maybe we're perceived. And so the more feedback that you can get about that and around that, like either through a coach or through, doing 360-degree evaluations from like those who surround you all the time.
Right.
But I'm always looking at a 5-year, maybe not even 5-year, because 5 years goes so like things move so quickly. It's very hard to get a 5-year. But I always look at, okay, where do I want my company, or where do I want my life, or whatever? What does that look like in 3 years and 5 years? And then what kind of leader do I need to be in order to be running that? Mm-hmm. And then start developing now to be ahead of that curve is kind of the way that I've looked at it, which is actually how the book came about.
Yeah. So say a little more about that, because it's not like you didn't have enough to do already. What propelled you to, or compelled you to want to write a book when you already you're basically running this company now. You're running 2 companies.
Yes.
And a family.
And a family. Yeah. So what really happened was I started, looking at where we needed to take both the software company and both where we wanted the restoration company to be. And I started to think at where I really needed to be was as an influencer, where I would be able to capture and influence hearts and minds, and even improving my public speaking and all of these kind of things where I'm like, I really need to be able to relate to people, to present to people, to engage on issues that, I think are common. And that's what I started looking at. And I really thought a vehicle to do that would be to become an author and to become a book. And then you have a platform for, from where you can share your experiences and stuff like that. But I didn't want to just write a book to just say I was an author. I wanted something that would really have some good content that people could, when those 2 things meshed, it was really great. So, but it's been difficult. Like, it's been difficult to learn how to, be a great podcast guest, to get up and do public speaking events. I had to hire a public speaking coach and really start learning some of the ins and outs of that. That was, I made the decision to write a book, and by the time that it was published was a 6-month gap. So I did this process very quickly.
Yeah.
And because I really wanted my growth to happen quickly, because I knew that what was being required of me outside of my business or inside my business would need that. So somebody might look at that and go, well, that was just a distraction away from this other thing that you were trying to build. But really, I looked at it as a way to grow me very, very quickly into being that next generation leader that I felt like I needed to become.
So that would you say that was somewhat of a personal goal of yours then? Because you already have these two businesses that are growing and developing. Because you said that when I asked you about writing the book, you said, well, I needed to see where the businesses were going next. And yet to be kind of a thought leader, to be an influencer, that's a whole nother kind of persona. That almost doesn't have anything to do with the restoration business in some ways, right?
Well, you would think so, but it doesn't. It's led to so much opportunity within the restoration business, and really even within inside this our own company. Like, it's really easy to be an influencer. Nothing's easy, but it's much easier to be an influencer out in the world than to be an influence inside your own company, because like there's no BSing inside your own company, right? You can go out there and present this beautiful picture and act like you have all of these answers, and everything can be crumbling back at home, or whatnot, So really, like, I felt like being able to do this and learn how to take your ideas from inside your head and inside your heart.
Yeah.
And have that come out in a way where you could incite passion, you could incite engagement, you could incite like people to really want to move in the direction you were going. That's how I felt like it really brought it all home together. And it's given me exposure that we would have never gotten otherwise. So that which has helped our business, which definitely has helped the software. And so I think it was a personal goal, but it was more a personal goal that I knew would have influence in.
Sure.
But one thing that I will say that was so surprising to me.
Yeah.
But like that, I think this is a nugget that I'm just now starting to be able to process.
Yeah.
So, because I was working on so many big goals, right? So we just finished kind of the development of the software. It was in beta, and we were, going to be trying to launch that. So launching a new company, which was, that's a big, big undertaking. It's a startup. All of the things that are challenging. And then we really had some aggressive goals with our restoration company, and how we were going to expand that to the next level. And then I was taking on a book and, doing some major projects. So I had all of these big goals. And what ended up happening was somewhere in the middle of all of this, where I just kept stretching and stretching, and you're combating fear, and you're dealing with failure, and you're like, like all of these challenging emotions that come with stretching yourself a lot. And you also have so much runway. So things that you were really good at and that you were confident about start slipping. So like, for instance, I'm a runner, and I've always been a runner. And, I've run ultra marathons and everything. And a couple of years ago, my younger brother said, hey, I'm going to be running 100 miles race. And I really want you to be my pacer. And so what that means is
you have nothing else going on. Let's not forget you also have 4 children.
Right. But then and when he's like, really, it's going to be 20-mile commitment, and you're going to, like, the last 20 miles, like, will you run with me or whatever? And I had originally said no. And then somewhere in all of this, I said, this is going to be an experience that I would regret not being a part of. And so I called him back and I said, yes, I'll do it. But then in the middle of all of these things where you're stretching and growing or whatever, and like logically I said, oh, this will be great. I'll be able to get out, it will force me to be out running, and I'll be able to, have a place to think and decompress, and it will be great therapy, and, I'll just be out there doing my miles. But in reality, what happened is I was being stretched in all of these ways that were challenging, that even the things that I was good at, like running, I just couldn't do. There was just no runway to do. And it's not that I couldn't get out there and run. I could. I just didn't have any passion around it anymore. And so that was just to illustrate. By the way, we did end up running that together, and it was fantastic. I got myself together and actually made it to the starting line, and it was one of the most incredible experiences. But
wow.
that's a story for another podcast. Running under the stars through the night with your baby brother. It was really
gosh.
But anyway, so then in the middle of all that, you start having all of these self-doubts, like I'm failing in every avenue that and now I can look back and said, it wasn't like a failing. What it was a capacity issue and a focus issue. You were just stretching in so many ways that like all of these other things that you felt like you had mastered just had to kind of fall off. And, but and so you get into this place where you're just like, am I really good at any of this? Like you never have one of those things that you can just hang your hat on and go, okay, this isn't stressful. I've got it mastered. No problem.
Wow.
So that was such a learning experience for me. So hopefully that will be useful to any of your listeners who are really stretching themselves in multiple ways, that they notice that some other things that start falling off, and then to just be able to recognize it's just a capacity issue. It doesn't mean like
it's just capacity, but you still did it anyway. I mean, it's really interesting to hear about that, and that you still pulled it off. That's amazing. Just amazing.
Well, thank you.
I'm curious, I'm curious about your children, because I think that the way that many of us and our children get the context for thinking about work and our attitudes about work and career and all that, we get that from our parents usually. And so I'm curious to know what you've noticed in your own children, or how they think about themselves going forward in their lives, or how they think about you and your husband, and watching the two of you develop your careers, and how you think that might be influencing them and their aspirations. I mean, most of your kids now are probably teenagers, right?
Yeah. So I've got a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, one that will be 12 soon in a couple of weeks, and a 6-year-old.
Okay.
So we've got,
you got quite the range.
We got a little range there, but I think the jury's still out on that. I mean, I don't think you really know how they feel about it until they get to be an adult, and it all kind of shakes out in the wash. But what I hope they're seeing from it, and what they tell me, is that, like, just that they're super proud that they, it's really, I mean, really a lot of support.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's showing them that this is fun, like there's a lot of ways that we can spend our life, and there's a lot of things that we can do, and none of it has to be big. None of it has to be like out there, like exposed to the world. There can be a lot of, but whatever it is, whatever they find passion around, really like dig into that and make the most of it. And then, not be afraid to try things that may not work out, and not be like, don't limit themselves because of fear, like there's a lot of things that that can prevent you from taking that next step, whether it's fear about yourself and your own capability, or just fear of the consequences of, okay, what if I start this business and we lose all this money? Yeah. I mean, there's all of those things. And hopefully what I'm instilling in them is just like to dream big, to not be afraid to go after it. And there will be fear and failure along the way, but like how much fun to really be able to dive into whatever it is your passion, and like stretch yourself and grow and see what's possible.
Yeah. And that's how you learn, right? And they've got living examples right in front of them for that. I think part of that is also how, a big part of that is the messages that we've been given. And clearly, your children are getting the message that it's okay to try things. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to explore. So, and I'm curious, have any of them read your book?
Yeah. So I know my daughters have, and I know, so my 14-year-old, I know he started it. But last time I asked him, I said, "Hey, did you finish that book?" He's like, "No, Mom, I'm still reading it." So I know at some point maybe they will, but I know my daughters have definitely, and they've actually shared it with a couple of their teachers at school. And anyway.
Oh, Rachel, this has been, I love the story, the trajectory of everything that you've done, and the spirit in which you've done it. And I know that you've learned, a lot of things along the way, that it all hasn't been all smooth sailing, that there's been a lot of hard work, and yet there's just a couple of nuggets that I think I take away from your story. I think there's a real spirit of a willingness to kind of dig in and, try to solve problems, try to unpack things and solve them, figure out the best way to address things, to work well with other people, and also a real willingness to take a look in the mirror at yourself and improve yourself along the way. And and there's and also to make use of the resources that are available to you. You haven't been alone in this. I think that's a key for a lot of people who are successful. Is nobody is successful in a vacuum. You have not done this alone. And yet there's clearly a kind of a fire in your belly. There's a spirit within you that really carries you through a lot of what you've done. And I have a feeling there's a lot more to come.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope, because I think that that's where the fun and the juice of life is.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to always be at the final destination. It's like that journey of getting there, is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of tears and hard in the middle of that. So, uh, but. And I agree, like, I definitely have had so much support. I think, coming in, I think I was very lucky to come into an environment that was willing to invest and, to be patient to see the fruits of that investment. I think, like, the team that has surrounded me, and, like, the executive team that I have in the restoration business right now has just been so supportive, and really has worked hard to get to where they are, and we're always trying to stretch and grow each other. And that's, one of the things that they say they love and hate about me is that. So hopefully at the end of the day, really, that we're all better people because of it, and that we're giving back, like that then translates into what's happening at home, and that our home is growing, and that we're providing, like we're growing as individuals that go out into the community and then make an impact there. And hopefully, it's just like in my book, I talk about it as the ripple effect of who with you.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you've added to the ripple effect of this podcast, no doubt about it. So, Rachel, thank you so much. Everything that we've talked about today, links to your companies, your book, will all be in the show notes. I thank you so much for being here today. I love what you're up to in the world in general. And we'll be watching. Keep going.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Rachel Stewart. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 063. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you were inspired by this episode with Rachel, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button or follow the instructions provided there. Thanks so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.